Welcome to the Rocket and Raygun Awards. We have been dealing with all kinds of incredible games as we've been going video by video through all of the categories for the 2019 titles that came out. We've been looking at some really big games. Now we're going to look at some really big, smaller scale games in our best indie title of the year. Now we've got a bunch of our own nominees, but before we get to those, let's hear from the community.
My pick for best indie game and best RPG this year is Disco Elysium. Now, when people talk about spiritual successors to the likes of Baldur's Gate back in the old 90s PC days, we might think about newer games like Dragon Age, but I would argue that Disco Elysium is the coolest translation of pure D&D in the basement with your friends systems I've ever seen. It's just comedic and powerful, and it just feels really great playing through what's really a small game world, but it always feels full. You're always going back to more of the familiar people and learning new things. Again, it's that D&D feel. You make a lot with a little, and that's what I love about Disco Elysium.
Outer Wilds is the best indie game of 2019. That game is a miracle of game design and had us just in awe.
Also the best banjo music in a video game in 2019 as well.
By far, but that's a separate category.
Best indie of the year, I'm giving to Grindstone. That's right, a mobile game. I can't believe it either. Of course, Cappy made this, and it's part of Apple Arcade. And I think it is a return to form of what I knew Cappy as when they did Critter Crunch on PS3. A fun puzzle game that is simple to understand and then so devious and difficult to master in later levels. Going through here, having to connect the colors, go through, attack them all, but then always have that thing of like, I can probably last another turn. Greed becomes your enemy in Grindstone, right? As you are literally grinding out, making a better character. You always want to hang out longer to get more loot, but you run that risk of actually getting KO'd and killed out there, so you have to get out. It's a beautiful game, regardless of the fact that it's on mobile, regardless of Apple Arcade. It's one of the best games this year.
I have been playing Grindstone so much every day. It is such a good time. It is an Apple Arcade game, so you have to subscribe to that service. Incredible. It's matching. Sure, you're matching, but there's so much more to it than that. The enemies, the actual character that you play, the leveling up that you can do. I am hooked. It is one of the mobile games that has its hooks in me, and one of those games that is not freemium. It's not freemium. Don't worry. It's not going to try to take more of your dough. You already pay monthly. You're good. Go Grindstone.
VR is all about indies, so it's tough to pick one, so I'll give some love to The Fisherman's Tale. You are in a room, and you look down, and there's a small version of the room in front of you, and if you look up, there's a giant version of the room you are actually in. And what you gotta do is mess with scale and like put items in the small version to have items from the big version drop down. Really cool use of scale in VR. It's fantastic, it's super intuitive and fun, and I recommend it to anybody.
I say Grease is the best indie game of 2019. I was so stunned to see how beautiful the graphics and the animation were, and I really loved the music in it, and it really had a terrific story, and I really enjoyed the puzzle solving stuff in the gameplay.
Every year, so many good indie games are released, and it's really hard to stay on top of them. But for me, this year, I'm gonna give some love to Katana Zero. It's got that psychedelic, zany vibe that Hotline Miami brought us. It's got that adrenaline-fueled soundtrack. It's got a really cool, fun gameplay gimmick, and it's got a really interesting and unsettling story told in an equally unsettling way.
I loved Katana Zero. I feel like it brought pixel perfect platforming to kind of an action combat approach, and I really loved like the neon aesthetic to it. I thought the soundtrack was incredible. The combat was just the right amount of difficult, and retrying levels, and after completing them, being able to see your run, the way you would reload right back in. I thought it was a phenomenal title and one that shouldn't be missed. I absolutely loved Katana Zero, and it's easily my indie game of the year until someone mentions all the other good indie games, and I'm like, oh, those are good too. But as of right now, definitely Katana Zero.
I didn't play a lot of indie games in 2019, but my personal favorite was Baba Is You. As long as you move wards around, you can change objects and give them different properties, and solving puzzles has never felt so fulfilling.
So the best indie game of 2019 has got to be Shenmue 3. I know a lot of people may disagree with this, the play style is out of date, but they're just wrong. It's a great story, incredible for the series. We've been waiting a long time. More true relationships and dynamics between people in this game than many others today.
I had a lot of fun playing this game. It's called My Time at Porta. Kind of like a Harvest Moon aspect, but it adds mining, all kinds of stuff. You do a lot of things to upgrade your ranch, upgrade your factory. Really, really great indie game. I had a lot of fun playing it, going through it.
Fantastic suggestions, everybody. Let's get to the nominees that we've got down on our list. Wargroove, The Tourist, Untitled Goose Game, Cadence of Hyrule, Crypt of the Necrodancer featuring The Legend of Zelda, and Sayonara Wild Hearts. Terrific titles there. You can't go wrong with any of these games. Let's talk about Sayonara Wild Hearts, which was a launch title with Apple Arcade, and I don't think they could have picked a stronger game to kind of showcase their new monthly service. It's actually a fantastic game to play with people that don't normally play a lot of video games. It's an interactive pop album. It plays a little bit like Space Channel 5 and lots of rhythm games out there. It's not an incredibly complex game gameplay-wise, but it is beautiful with some really terrific music that has been well crafted and well composed and beautifully sung, and it's funky. I actually listen to the soundtrack all the time. I love its uniqueness and I love its addictiveness, and I also love what Sayonara Wild Hearts does with other people as well when they see the game. One of those titles that kind of suggests that video games are a lot more than just first-person shooters. Indie games do that a lot. They really kind of deliver this whole different take on it. And it's an incredibly important aspect of the ambition of a lot of these smaller teams out there. It's not our winner, though, for Best Indie Game of the Year. Let's talk about Cadence of Hyrule. Very happy that this game was coming together. It was a big surprise. It was created right here in our home city in Vancouver, and it, again, encompasses rhythm and the use of music and your own ability to kind of deal with all of these different tunes and sounds that are coming at you, but also get through this ever-present and ever-evolving sense of danger. And it's a very different take on a Zelda experience, even though it borrows liberally from things that we recognize from the Zelda world. It looks like a classic Zelda game, but it plays unlike any other Zelda game out there. It's a wonderful, wonderful title, but again, it's not our winner for Best Indie Game this year. Untitled Goose Game is a title that I cannot believe I say out loud. I can't believe that there is a game about a goose who's very crafty and sneaky, and he pisses off a lot of people, but that's what he wants to do. He wants to run around, he wants to honk at people, he wants to flap his big wings and steal their pumpkins and radios and stuff and, create chaos and not get caught. And that sounds fun to you? It is. It's crazy fun. Even though it's very minimalistic in its aesthetics and the visuals, it's still, I think, a beautifully rendered game, and it's very clear to see what you're supposed to do. It, again, though, is not the best indie game that we played this year. Wargroove, definitely in contention. Very much a classic-styled, turn-based strategy game, grid-based. It's got a very cool story and great production values with the music and the characters, and it's still all about having a relationship with the different people in your army and taking out the opponent in a smart way, not losing your favorite characters along the way, and just feeling very rewarded by your progression through the experience. A wonderful game, definitely one of the best indie titles of 2019. But the game that we're going to award this Rocket and Raygun to is The Tourist. It's an action-adventure RPG light where you play a guy in a Hawaiian shirt visiting a bunch of islands, and it's made with blocky cubes. It's got a very distinctive art style that is endearing immediately, and it's just so clever, and it really is about emergent fun and just testing the systems and seeing if it works. Like, one of my favorite things that I always delight in when I play video games, if there's ever a sequence where the characters go into an arcade, and this is in tons of games, the game within the game idea, but not always do they make the arcade machines in the arcades that we travel into playable. But in this case, not only did they do that, but the games that they built in the little arcade you go into are actually really fun and addictive unto themselves. They even have a little super pixelated version of Fast in there, which is like a fun F-Zero-alike to play. And there's lots of gameplay in every single direction, and this game is a pure delight. And if you haven't checked out The Tourist, you are missing not only one of the best indie games of 2019, it is truly one of the best games of the year. We have many more categories for you to peruse, so please do that. Click on all of our vids and check them out. We've heard from people that do a lot of the same kinds of things that EP does. Thank you for contributing there, and also lots of supporters of this channel. Thank you so much for watching. Definitely check those out. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching this episode.